Dragon Emperor Sun Chapter 651 to Chapter 670. Mr. Chen, is there something wrong? Zhou Zhiqian asked in a low voice. Oh, nothing, let's go in and see. David followed Zhou Zhiqian towards the room, but along the way, David didn't feel a trace of spiritual energy, but a gloomy wind. Logically speaking, if the Shen family has a 10,000-year Ginseng King, they should be able to sense the aura emanating from the Ginseng King even in a radius of several hundred meters, but David did not feel it at all. There are only two possibilities. The first is that the Wanyan Shen Wang is not in the Shen family's yard, and the second is that the Shen family does not have a Wanyan Shen Wang at all, but spreads fake news. But no matter what the situation is, David has to see Wanyan Shen Wang first. If he doesn't see anything, David will not trade. Zhou Zhiqian took David and the others into the hall. Although there were many servants of the Shen family, no one stopped them, and they all nodded slightly to greet Zhou Zhiqian. It could be seen that Zhou Zhiqian was familiar with the Shen family. After entering the hall, I saw 5 or 6 people sitting on the sofa, some smoking cigarettes, frowning, some bowing their heads, as if thinking about something, and a woman with tears in her eyes. She must have just cried. Uncle Zhou, when did you arrive? Please take a seat. At this time, a young man found Zhou Zhiqian and them, so he hurriedly got up and said. The others also looked up and saw that Zhou Zhiqian was coming, and they all stood up to greet him. Everyone respected Zhou Zhiqian. Sit down, everyone sit down. Zhou Zhiqian was a little flattered, he hurriedly waved his hand to let everyone sit down, and then asked the young man, Shen Lang, I heard that your father is ill, so I hurried over here, how are others? Zhou Zhiqian was very knowledgeable about the world, so he didn't mention the Wanyan Shen Wang at all. Instead, he first cared about the body of Shen Wanzan, the head of the Shen family. In this way, when the time came to talk about the Wanyan Shen Wang, the Shen family always wanted to take care of some face. Hey, Shen Lang sighed, aren't we worried? When I just came back, my dad was good and bad, and occasionally I could meet people, but now I'm like a fool, I don't know anyone, and I'm still old. Yelling, biting when you see someone. When Zhou Zhiqian heard it, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He didn't expect Shen Wanzan's condition to be so serious. What the H3LL is going on? How did it become like this? Although Zhou Zhiqian heard what his younger brother Zhou Zhishan said, what Zhou Zhishan knew was just a little bit of fur. After all, only the Shen family knew the real reason. Shen Lang opened his mouth, but without saying the last word, he sighed and sat back. The other Shen family members were also silent, and some were crying softly. Didn't you see a doctor? Zhou Zhiqian asked with a questioning face. I've searched for it. I've searched for doctors in a radius of hundreds of miles. No one can see it. They all say that Wanzan will not survive for 3 days. The woman replied, and as she spoke, she burst into tears. Brother and sister, don't cry for now, I think there will be a way. Zhou Zhiqian comforted the woman, then glanced at David, and then said to the Shen family, I am back this time, from Guan'en. I specially invited Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen is a famous doctor, no matter what kind of illness, the medicine will definitely cure the disease. When everyone saw that Zhou Zhiqian brought a genius doctor, they all looked at David and the 3 behind Zhou Zhiqian. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Lin Tianhu. After all, Lin Tianhu was older, and it was possible to say that he was a genius doctor, but David, a young man in his early 20s, no one thought of him as a genius doctor. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on him, Lin Tianhu suddenly felt uncomfortable, and hurriedly pointed to David, this is Mr. Chen, the genius doctor who cures the disease. Seeing Lin Tianhu say that David is a genius doctor, everyone in the Shen family was stunned, and their eyes were full of disbelief. Yes, this is Mr. Chen. Don't look at Mr. Chen's youth, but his medical skills are Sai Huichuo's. Zhou Zhiqian also pointed to David and said. Seeing Zhou Zhiqian say this, the Shen family only had a trace of confidence in their eyes. "Uncle Joe, since he is a genius doctor, then please take a look at my father. As long as my father can be cured, my Shen family will be very grateful." Seeing this, Shen Lang hurriedly said to Zhou Zhigan. Where did Zhou Zhigan dare to call the shots? He could only look back at David. "Mr. Chen, what do you think? I can cure the disease, but before we can cure it, we'd better speak clearly," David said lightly. Yes, let's make it clear first, so that there will be no quarrels later." Zhou Zhiqian nodded again and again. "Tell me, how much do you want?" Shen Lang asked David. After all, the family came from thousands of miles away from the customs, so it is not an exaggeration to negotiate the price before seeing a doctor, and the Shen family is not unreasonable. "I don't want money." David shook his head. "I will heal your father, but you must guarantee that the king of Wanyan can only sell it to me, and let me see the goods first." As soon as David's words came out, the Shen family were all stunned, but Shen Lang's face sank and said, "So you came here for the Wanyan Shen Wang? Uncle Joe, what the H3LL is going on? If you want to King Wanyan, with the friendship between our two families, as long as the price is right, we will naturally sell it to you first, but you brought a so-called genius doctor to treat my father, but you threatened my Shen family with it. Is this right?" "A little too much to say." Zhou Zhigan hurriedly explained, "Nephew, you have misunderstood. Mr. Chen is indeed rushing to King Wanyan, but he is indeed a genius doctor who can cure your father's illness. I definitely did not use this to threaten you. The meaning of the family, besides, our Zhou family will not want this 10,000-year ginseng king. How can I dare to make up my mind about what Mr. Chen likes? I just want to see things, and then buy your Wanyan ginseng king. It's not that I don't give you money. Who do you sell it to? You just sell me the Wanyan ginseng king, and I will keep your father safe." David looked at Shen Lang and said lightly. As soon as Shen Lang heard it, he was absolutely right in what David said. Whoever sells this is also selling it, as long as the price is right, and David can also heal his father's illness. "Okay, I promise you, you will take care of my father first, and I promise to sell you the Wanyan ginseng king." After Shen Lang thought for a while, he nodded and said, "I want to see something first." David didn't feel the existence of King Wanyan Shen in the Shen family, so he had to see something first. If he was deceived by the Shen family, then who would David go to? David wanted to look at things first, which made Shen Lang directly silent. Shen Lang's brows were slightly wrinkled, as if he was thinking about something. "My dear nephew, just take a look, and you won't be missing anything. Mr. Chen's request is reasonable." Zhou Zhigan saw that Shen Lang hesitated, so he persuaded him. But Shen Lang still didn't speak, and the rest of the Shen family were also silent. Seeing such a group situation, Zhou Zhigan frowned, "Nephew, don't you guys have no Wanyan Shen Wang at all?" No, Uncle Joe, there must be a 10,000-year-old ginseng king in our Shen family, it's just this ginseng king." Just when Shen Lang was about to tell the reason, an excited voice suddenly came, "Langer, I invited the director of Fengtian First People's Hospital to treat my eldest brother, and my eldest brother is saved." Everyone looked around for fame, and saw a middle-aged man walk in with a 60th old man with a respectful support. This middle-aged man is Shen Wanzhen's younger brother, Shen Wanfu, and the 66th old man is Zheng Xuan, the director of Fengtian First People's Hospital. When everyone in the Shen family saw Zheng Xuan coming, they all hurriedly stood up to greet him, and invited Zheng Xuan to the master to sit down. The arrival of Zheng Xuan made the Shen family instantly forget David's existence. After all, they were skeptical of David's identity as a genius doctor. After all, David was too young, and Zheng Xuan was a well-known genius doctor in the entire Northeast. It's just that he is getting older. After retirement, Zheng Xuan no longer sees doctors. No matter how much money is paid, Zheng Xuan will not see it. Someone once offered 100 million to ask Zheng Sun to help him see a doctor, but Zheng Sun refused. And this time Shen Wanfu invited Zheng Sun, which made all the Shen family see hope. Zheng Sun gave the Shen family a proud look, and then said, "Shen Wanfu, this old man promised you to come and see your brother, but don't forget my conditions. If you dare to lie to me, don't look at me. It's an old bone, it's easy to deal with your Shen family. President Zheng, what I promised you, I will definitely do it. After you have healed my eldest brother, I will take you to see the Wanyan Shenwang immediately. If President Zheng is interested, we will give priority to President Zheng." Bye. Shen Wanfu quickly assured. It turned out that the reason why Zheng Sun was able to come was because of the 10,000 years of Ginseng King. It seems that he also wanted to get this 10,000 years of Ginseng King. "President Zheng, as long as you heal my father, anything can be said." Shen Lang also said quickly. They put all their hopes on Zheng Sun now. If Zheng Sun can't do anything, I'm afraid that others will be even more helpless. Seeing that the Shen family had said this, Zheng Sun nodded, very satisfied with the attitude of the Shen family. "Shen Lang, we came first. Besides, Mr. Chen can also heal your father. Why did you promise others?" Zhou Higan was a little upset when he saw that the Shen family gave Zheng Sun this 10,000 years of ginseng. Shen Lang glanced at Zhou Higan, and said a little embarrassedly, "Uncle Zhou, we don't know the genius doctor you found, and no one can believe it, and President Zheng is a famous genius doctor in the northeast of our country, so you must be too. You've heard of it, of course we have to give it to Dean Zheng first." Zhou Higan wanted to say something, but was directly stopped by David. "Don't tell them, no one can see the illness of the male owner except me, so it's okay to let others try it." David knew that this Shen Wanzan was not sick at all, nor was he sick at all. It would be this kind of symptom. To put it bluntly, Shen Wanzan got hysteria, and it wasn't just a matter of injections and medicines. As soon as David's words came out, Zheng Sun, who was sitting on the sofa, looked at him coldly. When he saw that David was only in his early 20s, he said such wild words, and he said it in front of him. This is obviously did not pay attention to him. "Humph, you're young and your tone is quite crazy. This old man has practiced medicine for decades. When I treat people, I'm afraid you still don't know which mountain to climb a tree on." Zheng Sun reprimanded David with a cold face. "Boy, where did you come from? In front of Dean Zheng, you dare to say such arrogant words? Do you know that Dean Zheng is in our northeastern region, and he is a famous doctor? There is no disease that he can't cure. The Dean doesn't like it well, so no one likes it." Shen Wanfu looked at David and said with a look of disdain. "That's right, I haven't heard that Dean Zheng has taken action, and he has a bad disease. You are young, you know SHT, you should stay where it is cool." The rest of the Shen family also spoke coldly to David. After all, David annoyed Zheng Sun, and it was not good for their Shen family. It really drove Zheng Sun away, who would treat Shen Wanzan to a doctor. "What do you know? Mr. Chen is not only skilled in medicine, but also can concoct alchemy. Why don't you compare Mr. Chen with ordinary doctors?" Zhou Higan became anxious when he saw that everyone in the Shen family had made disrespectful remarks to David. "Brother Zhou, we have taken your kindness. You should take the genius doctor you found. We can rest assured that we have Director Zheng here. We won't need such a powerful doctor." Shen Wanfu actually ordered Zhou Hiqian to evict guests. This made Zhou Hiqian angry, but he accompanied David to sell Wanyan Ginseng King. Even if he was angry, Zhou Hiqian could not leave. Okay, let's talk about your brother's symptoms first." Zheng Sun saw that David and Zhou Higan had stopped talking, so he waved his hand and asked Shen Wanfu. When Shen Wanfu heard this, he hurriedly followed Zheng Sun about his eldest brother's situation. Zheng Sun frowned slightly through Shen Wanfu's description. "Listening to what you said, your brother doesn't seem to be sick, it seems that he has hysteria, and his mind is confused by dirty things. Zheng Sun analyzed. What? When everyone in the Shen family heard this, they all panicked. Although the Shen family is rich, they are all ordinary people. They have occasionally heard of ghosts and gods, but they have never encountered them. Now hearing Zheng Sun say this, they are all startled. However, because of Zheng Sun's reputation, they couldn't help but believe what he said, so Shen Wanfu hurriedly asked, President Zheng, then, is there any help for my brother? Of course it's saved. Since I'm here, even if it's hysteria, I can be cured, don't worry. Zheng Sun said confidently. Hearing what Zheng Sun said, the Shen family felt relieved. And David looked at Zheng Sun somewhat unexpectedly. He didn't expect the other party to be able to see that it was hysteria, and that he was being overtaken by a ghost. Zheng Sun groped from his body, and quickly took out a beautiful small wooden box. After opening it, there was a thumb-sized pill in it, which was black and not slippery. When Zhou Zhiqian saw the pills, his eyes suddenly lit up, because he looked too familiar, and the small wooden box containing the pills was obviously made by someone he sent to process, specifically for packaging Xiaohuan Dan, and the black pill that Zheng Sun held in his hand was Xiaohuan Dan. David laughed when he saw that Zheng Sun took out Xiaohuan Dan from his arms, but he didn't say anything. President Zheng, what is this? Shen Wanfu asked in confusion. The other Shen family members also got together and looked carefully at the pills in Zheng Sun's hand. Seeing everyone's curious appearance, Zheng Sun said proudly, this pill is called Xiaohuan Dan, it has the effect of refreshing the mind and strengthening the body, but it is a magic medicine that I spent millions on and dragged on. The relationship was obtained from the customs, and only this one was obtained. If it wasn't for your Shen family's Wanyan Ginseng King, I would be reluctant to take it out. This medicine pill will ensure that the mind of the Shen family master can be restored. What Zheng Sun said was very confident, but those Shen family members were stunned when they heard it. Hearing Zheng Sun's words, Zhou Zhiqian's eyes widened in surprise. This medicinal pill was sold by him, and the packaging box was designed and made by him, but he had never bought it for a price of several million. Yu Qi is still in front of David, isn't Zheng Sun saying this, he is framing Zhou Zhiqian for taking black money? You must know that Xiaohuan pill was refined by David and handed over to Zhou Zhiqian and he's higang to sell it as an agent. The price is fixed, and the amount of money they give to David is also fixed. Would David be happy to give David such a little money? Cold sweat broke out on Zhou Zhiqian's forehead, he hurriedly looked at David, and wanted to explain to David, but he was stopped by David's eyes. David believed that Zhou Zhiqian did not dare to eat black money. Nonsense! Besides, David didn't even know that the Xiaohuan Dan he made could also cure hysteria. This is pure nonsense. Although Xiaohuan Dan can refresh the mind and strengthen the body, if you want to give the dirty things in the human body, forced it out, Xiaohuan Dan has no such effect. It's just that David didn't expose that Zheng Sun on the spot. He wanted to continue to wait, waiting to see Zheng Sun's joke. When the Shen family saw that Zheng Sun was useless, they would naturally ask for it. President Zheng, the money for this pill will be paid by our Shen family, and we will never let President Zheng suffer. Shen Wanfu understood what Zheng Sun meant, so he said quickly. Shen Er's boss is being polite. I didn't mean it that way. It's just a few million, and I still don't take it seriously. Zheng Sun waved his hand with a smile, and then gave Xiaohuandan to Shen Lang, go and take it to your father, I believe your father will be well soon. Shen Lang thanked him again and again, took Xiaohuandan carefully, and hurriedly ran towards the backyard. Everyone in the Shen family waited anxiously, hoping that Xiaohuandan would really work. About 10 minutes later, Shen Lang ran back with a happy face. Langer, how is your father? Shen Lang's mother asked. Mom, Dean Zheng's Xiaohuan Dan is really useful. After my dad ate it, he stopped making noise and even called out my name. He knew me. Shen Lang said excitedly. Really? It's great, I'm going to see him. As Shen Lang's mother said, she was about to run to the backyard. Mom, my dad was only awake for a while, then he fell down and fell asleep. It's useless for you to go there. Shen Lang stopped his mother. President Zheng, my elder brother fell asleep again, what's going on? Shen Wanfu asked in confusion. Patriarch Shen's mind is damaged, his body is controlled, he has been overworked, and now he suddenly wakes up, he must be very tired, so it is normal to fall asleep. Zheng Sun explained. When everyone in the Shen family heard this, they felt that what Zheng Sun said was reasonable, and they all nodded, showing even more respect towards Zheng Sun. Second Shen, I have cured your brother's illness. Shouldn't it be time to show me the king of Ginseng for 10,000 years? Zheng Sun asked Shen Wanfu. Shen Wanfu opened his mouth, but when he saw Zhou Zhigan and David, they would only know what to do. Shen Wanfu closed his mouth and hesitated for a while before looking at Zhou Zhigan and said, Brother Zhou, you came back from the pass, and when you arrive at my Shenmu home, we should have done our best to treat you as a landlord and invited you to a meal, but it's not very convenient today. I hope Brother Zhou will take your people away, and I will definitely come to the door in person another day to invite Brother Zhou to dinner. Shen Wanfu was giving Zhou Zhigan an evacuation order. After all, with Zhou Zhigan and David here, Shen Wanfu had something to say. Shen Wanfu's words made Zhou Zhigan ugly, but he couldn't say anything. After all, what Shen Wanfu said was polite, he couldn't just stay here and not leave, right? The helpless Zhou Zhigan could only look at David, wondering what David thought. Do you really think your brother is okay? David looked at Shen Wanfu and asked. Ah, what's the matter? Didn't you hear what my nephew said just now? My eldest brother already recognizes him, and now he's just sleeping. Shen Wanfu was convinced, after all, Zheng Sun's identity was there. Humph! David snorted coldly, Xiao Huandan can refresh the mind, but it's just a tonic, it can't cure diseases, let alone hysteria, not to mention when this Xiao Huandan is worth millions, I do not know how. Young man, are you doubting me, this little Huandan? Hearing David's words, then Zheng Sun was not happy. Didn't this make it clear that he falsely reported the price? Seeing that Zheng Sun was unhappy, the Shen family hurriedly accused David. You know the Sht. Dean Zheng has practiced medicine for many years, do you still know if Xiao Huandan can cure the disease? That's right, Dean Zheng asked a friend to buy this little Huandan. He doesn't know how much it cost. Don't talk nonsense here, kid, it's like you made Xiao Huandan. Everyone in the Shen family said what I said, and no one was looking at Zhou Zhigan's face. Boy, don't rely on Brother Zhou's invitation, our Shen family will respect you, no matter what kind of genius doctor you are in the customs, you are not qualified to question President Zheng when you are here. Shen Wanfu said very annoyed, if he didn't look at Zhou Zhigan's face, he would have driven David away long ago. A child who has not grown all his hair, in front of Zheng Sun, brag. However, in the face of the cold words of the crowd, David was not angry. He came to the king of 10,000 years, and how could David leave without seeing the king of 10,000 years? You're right, that Xiao Huandan was really made by me. David's words immediately made everyone stunned. Immediately afterwards, all burst out laughing, and all looked at David mockingly. Then Zheng Sun looked even more contemptuous, at such a young age, he dares to brag about this kind of arrogance, but I heard that this Xiao Huandan was refined by an alchemy master in Guan, and this master obviously must be proficient in medical theory. How could it be you a little boy? I'm afraid you don't even know what the ingredients are in Xiao Huandan. I can testify that Xiao Huandan is indeed made by Mr. Chen, and I am selling the Xiao Huandan in this package. In the lower right corner of the package, the name of our Ren Hitang is also printed. Zhou Zhigan couldn't stand it any longer, so he stood up to testify, proving that Xiao Huandan was refined by David. Hearing what Zhou Haiqian said, Shen Wanfu hurriedly took the exquisite box, and sure enough, in the lower right corner, he saw the words Ren Hitang. The Shen family all knew that Zhou Haiqian was in the business of medicinal materials in Yunchinch and opened a Ren Hitang, but they didn't know that Zhou Haiqian was selling this Xiao Huandan. Brother Zhou, although Ren Hitang is indeed printed here, as far as I know, there are quite a few pharmacies called Ren Hitang in Guan. Shen Wanfu still couldn't believe that Zhou Haiqian's Ren Hitang had the ability to sell millions of pills, which requires a lot of economic strength. Although there are quite a few Ren Hitangs, Yunchinch has only my family. You ask Ding Zheng whether this little Huandan was bought from Yunchinch, or you'll know. Zhou Haiqian smiled slightly. Shen Wanfu looked at Zheng Xuan, but Zheng Xuan's face was a little surprised at this time, and he was looking at Zhou Higan. Are you Zhou Higan, Boss Zhou? Zhou Higan nodded, yes, I am Zhou Higan. Zheng Xuan was overjoyed, and hurriedly stepped forward and shook hands with Zhou Haiqian. Boss Zhou, I really didn't expect us to meet here. I just heard from my friend that you are also from Northeast China, but I have never met. I really asked a friend to buy this small return pill from Yunchinch Ren Hitang, and now many people want to buy it, but they are suffering from no way. Xiao Huandan is indeed very popular. After all, David has limited refining materials. Although the medicinal materials used for refining Xiao Huandan are all common medicinal materials, David does not have the time to refine Xiao Huandan all day long, and it is impossible for him to refine Xiao Huandan. Dan, wasting too much of your spiritual power. President Zheng, there is one thing I hope I can make clear today. The highest price of my little Huandan is not more than 1 million. When has it been sold for millions? The reason why Zhou Haiqian asked Zheng Xuan was that he wanted him to explain in front of David, but he could not let David misunderstand him. This. Zheng Xuan looked embarrassed when he was asked. He didn't know how to answer Zhou Haiqian. He couldn't admit that he falsely reported the price, right? At this time, Shen Lang saw Zheng Xuan's embarrassment, so he hurriedly said, Uncle Zhou, Ding Zheng must have been deceived by a friend. Although the price you sell Xiao Huandan is not high, maybe his friend increased the price privately. Woolen cloth. Shen Lang's words made Zheng Xuan go down the stairs in an instant, and immediately nodded, yes, it must be my friend who lied to me, I must find him to settle the account. Since Zheng Xuan has said so, Zhou Higan can't say anything more. Uncle Zhou, could it be that this small return pill is really made by this Mr. Chen? Shen Lang asked incredulously. Since Xiao Huandan was sold by Zhou Haiqian, he knew the origin of Xiao Huandan best. Of course, in the world, except for Mr. Chen, I'm afraid no one can make a small return pill. Zhou Haiqian nodded and said. However, David is a little embarrassed to say this. Xiao Huandan is the most basic medicinal pill, and I am afraid that some immortal cultivators can refine it. Now Zhou Higan directly touts him like this, which makes David very uncomfortable. Awkward. Boss Zhou, I know that this alchemy technique can't be learned overnight. This young man looks in his early 20s. Even if he learns from his mother's womb, I'm afraid he won't be able to practice an elixir like Xiao Huandan, right? Although Xiao Huandan was sold by Zhou Haiqian, Zheng Xuan still did not believe that David could make Xiao Huandan. After all, David is too young. In Zheng Xuan's eyes, David is just a child. I also don't quite believe that such a young person can really learn from his mother's womb. How high can he be in medicine? Can he refine medicine pills? Shen Wanfu didn't quite believe that David had the ability to concoct alchemy. I'm going to write a prescription now, you can follow the prescription, and I'll make one for you directly. David didn't have time to spend with these people, so he wanted to make alchemy on the spot to convince these people. It's the best. Zheng Xuan's eyes lit up. He was able to see the refining method of Xiao Huandan with his own eyes. Zheng Xuan was very excited. He knew the prescription and the refining method. Zheng Jun was confident that he could also make Xiao Huan Dan. Soon, David wrote the prescription, and Shen Lang sent someone to prepare the medicine according to the prescription. There were more than a dozen kinds of medicinal materials, which were soon ready. After all, they were all common medicinal materials, and they could be bought in every pharmacy. "Young man, I bought the herbs, how do you make them? If you need to make them, I can do it for you myself." Zheng Sun wanted to help David make alchemy himself, so that he could learn the method of alchemy more intuitively. "No, I don't need to cook alchemy," David said. His fingers suddenly moved, and then a green flame jumped on David's fingers. This time, everyone else was stunned, thinking that David could do magic. After all, they are all ordinary people, except on the stage of magic tricks. I have seen people who can rub their fingers to make fire, but I have not watched it off the stage. Pass. The flame in David's hand became stronger and stronger, and the temperature in the entire hall also rose a lot, and everyone watched silently, wanting to see how David concocted alchemy. Even Lin Tianhu and Qi Feng were attentive. Although they knew David's ability, they had not seen David refining the medicinal pills with their own eyes. I saw David throw the flame in his hand towards the medicinal herbs. The flame instantly surrounded the medicinal herbs, and the green flame instantly ignited the medicinal herbs, but it did not lead to other things in the room. These things that look like flames are actually just the spiritual power in David's body. It is impossible to ignite other things. This is all under David's control. Everyone watched in amazement, and saw that the medicinal materials became more and more prosperous, and finally turned into clouds of white smoke. When the smoke dissipated, everyone was surprised to find that there was a small return pill on the ground. Is this done? Zheng Sun's eyes were wide open, and his mouth was about to swallow an egg. He hurriedly ran over, picked up the Xiao Huandan on the ground, looked and looked, smelled, and after confirming that it was Xiao Huandan, Zheng Sun was petrified. The others also looked at David like a god. They were all ordinary people, and they had never seen such a method before. Even Lin Tianhu and Qi Feng had never seen alchemy concocting like this, and they couldn't help but feel surprised. Only the corners of David's mouth were slightly raised. In fact, he actually made small return pills. It was not like this, and it was impossible to make them one by one. He did this just to bluff the Shen family. Don't dare to question him. I believe that Xiao Huan Dan was made by me, right? David said lightly. I believe. Zheng Sun had an embarrassed look on his face. Originally, he wanted to learn secretly, but after seeing it, he realized that it was impossible for him to learn at all. Everyone in the Shen family was also embarrassed at this time, each with a wry smile on their faces. Brother Zhou, Mr. Chen has such a magical method, why didn't you say it earlier? Shen Wanfu said to Zhou's Higan. I said it, but you don't believe it. Zhou's Haiqian said helplessly. This time, Shen Wanfu was even more embarrassed. At first, Zhou's Higan said that David was a genius doctor, and they all suspected it. Later, they said that Xiao Huan Dan was refined by David. They still didn't believe it, but now they were slapped in the face. Mr. Chen, since you made Xiao Huan Dan, you just said that Xiao Huan Dan can't cure my father's disease at all, so why did my father suddenly wake up? Shen Lang stepped forward and asked David. Your father is not sick, he just has hysteria, he is a ghost, and Xiao Huandan has the function of refreshing the brain, but he can't cure the hysteria, so your father is not well, the reason why he can wake up and know you is just a coincidence, that's all. David explained. Just as David finished speaking, there was a burst of roars from the backyard, followed by the screams of the servants. Before everyone could react, a middle-aged man, wearing pajamas, rushed forward with disheveled hair. Dad! Shen Lang shouted at the middle-aged man. This middle-aged man is Shen Wanzan, the head of the Shen family. You ignorant guys, disturbing my cleaning and trying to steal my treasures, I want to kill all of you." Shen Wanzhen's face was full of hideousness, his mouth was wide open, and he shouted loudly. Following Shen Wanzhen's roar, gusts of overcast wind blew through the entire hall, and the temperature in the room suddenly dropped a lot. "What?" Seeing this, many Shen family members were so frightened that they thought about me running, but just after 2 steps, the door was closed by a gust of wind. Looking at this scene, Shen Wanfu was so frightened that he shuddered and said, "You, what kind of immortal are you? We don't know how to disturb you. As long as you let us go, my Shen family will worship you every year." Zhang Xuan frowned when he saw this scene, and his legs trembled slightly with fright. Although he had seen hysterical patients before, he had never seen such a horrible person. "Ha ha ha! If you want to worship me, you are not worthy." Shen Wanzhen laughed, and suddenly opened his mouth to exhale a stream of black gas, and the whole room instantly became extremely dark, making everyone scream in fear. Lin Tianhu and Chifeng were also a little scared, but they all took out their weapons and stood tightly beside David, while Zhou Zhigan had long since hid behind David. "Help me! Help me!" Already, the Shen family couldn't bear it and shouted desperately. "If you don't want to die, stand behind me all." At this time, David's voice sounded, and then the black fog in the room disappeared at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. When the black fog completely disappeared, everyone realized that it was David who opened his mouth and sucked all the black fog into his stomach. All these people were dumbfounded and looked at David in shock. They also regarded David as a monster. "Don't come, do you all want to die?" David saw that the Shen family was stunned and motionless, so he said coldly. David's reminder, the Shen family finally reacted, and hurriedly hid behind David. "Chen, Mr. Chen, what kind of fairy is this?" Hiding behind David, Shen Wanfu asked stumblingly. "Humph, it's just a shapeless soul, a goddamn god." David snorted coldly. But who knows, David's words directly angered Shen Wanzhen. "Boy, you dare to mock me, you are courting death." As he spoke, Shen Wanzhen said, his hands suddenly waved, and gusts of overcast wind came. These overcast winds were like sharp knives. Tiny. David pinched his fingers and saw blue flames beating on his 10 fingertips. As soon as David waved his hand, the flames instantly moved towards Shen Wanzhen, directly crushing the gloomy wind, and then burning on Shen Wanzhen's body. "Dad!" Seeing this scene, Shen Lang wanted to rush up. But he was stopped by Shen Wanfu. "Langer, that's not your dad anymore, don't go there." Seeing the blue flame burning on Shen Wanzhen's body, and the shrill screams from his mouth, everyone in the Shen family looked sideways, not daring to look again. "Mr. Chen, Patriarch Shen He." Although Zhou Zhiqian also knew that Shen Wanzhen, who was already in the dark, was no longer himself, he couldn't watch Shen Wanzhen get burned to death. "Don't worry, this flame can't hurt your body," David explained. Hearing what David said, everyone in the Shen family breathed a sigh of relief. The flames burned for 10 minutes, and Shen Wanzhen screamed for 10 minutes. "Aren't you coming out yet? Do you want me to use real fire to burn all your gods out?" David said with a cold face when he saw that the ghost didn't come out of Shen Wanzhen's body for a long time. "Boy, you have something, wait for me." The voice fell, and a black aura emerged from the top of Shen Wanzhen's head, and then the black energy condensed into the appearance of a man. It could be vaguely seen that the man's clothes were a little worn, but his whole face was full of hideousness, and 2 fangs were exposed. In this way, several people in the Shen family were frightened and fainted. That Shen Wanfu was also so frightened that he slumped on the ground, unable to say a word. David saw that the ghost had come out of Shen Wanzhen's body, and a flame appeared in his palm. This time the flame was indeed red. Seeing this red flame, the ghost's face showed horror, and it turned into a gust of wind. After the window was opened, it disappeared without a trace. David did not chase, but withdrew his spiritual power, looked at Shen Wanzan who was lying on the ground, and lightly tapped on Shen Wanzan's forehead. Shen Wanzan's body moved a bit, but soon there was no movement, as if he had fallen asleep. The hall returned to calm, but many people were scared to pee. Seeing their ugly state, they all went to change their clothes. "Mr. Chen, how is my dad, is he still alive?" Shen Lang hurriedly asked David. "Don't worry, your dad is all right, he will wake up soon," David said lightly. "Thank you, Mr. Chen, thank you, Mr. Chen." Shen Lang thanked him again and again. It turns out that Mr. Chen is an expert in magic. "I really don't know Mount Tai. I hope Mr. Chen will not take offense." Zhang Sun walked up to David with a face full of admiration, bowed deeply, and long ago lost the arrogance at the beginning. David just smiled and didn't explain. He didn't expect that Zhang Sun knew about Warlock. "Shen Lang, now that I have rescued your father, can your Shen family take out the 10,000-year Ginseng King and let me take a look?" David asked Shen Lang. When Shen Lang heard this, he was immediately embarrassed, and then looked at Shen Wanfu. Shen Wanfu hurriedly said, "Mr. Chen, the Wanyan Shen Wang was not here." "I already knew it wasn't here, where is it? Take me to see." David asked. Et. Shen Wanfu hesitated, unable to say a word. "You don't have any 10,000 years of Ginseng King at all, are you lying to me?" David's face turned cold. This shocked Shen Wanfu, and hurriedly waved his hand. No, how dare we lie to Mr. Chen, there is indeed a Wanyan Ginseng King, but we haven't dug it out, and the Wanyan Ginseng King is still black and blind. As for Lin, Mr. Chen also knows that digging ginseng requires experience and skills. If one ginseng whisker is cut off, the value of the whole ginseng will be greatly reduced, so we did not dare to dig. David knew that this mountain ginseng is not something that anyone can dig, or it will destroy the mountain ginseng. The Shen family didn't do this, so it makes sense that they didn't dare to dig it. "Then take me to the black blind forest to see." Even though David doesn't know how to dig, if he really is the king of 10,000 years of ginseng, he can practice directly beside the king of 10,000 years of ginseng until he can absorb the spiritual energy of the king of 10,000 years of ginseng, so that he doesn't need to dig. When Shen Wanfu heard this, he waved his hands in fright. "Mr. Chen, we don't dare to go. My eldest brother became like this because he went to Haiziezalin and went to more than a dozen mouths, and my eldest brother came back. Then what happened to them in the black blind forest?" David knew that ordinary ghosts would not easily possess themselves and harm others, let alone dare to follow them into the house. It must be known that there are many people in the ordinary Yangzai, and the Yang energy is relatively heavy, and ghosts are the least favorite place. Now this ghost actually followed Shen Wanzan home, and kept saying that he wanted to kill the Shen family. There must be something unknown. This. I'm not very clear about this, I have to ask my elder brother. Shen Wanfu didn't know what happened in Haiziazi forest. At this moment, Shen Wanzan took a long breath and opened his eyes. Dad, you finally woke up. Husband, you are awake." When Shen Lang and his mother saw that Shen Wanzan was awake, they jumped up excitedly. Shen Wanzan looked at his wife and children with a bewildered face, frowned slightly and said, "Where am I? What's wrong with me?" Shen Wanzan still didn't know what happened to him. Shen Lang told Shen Wanzan the whole thing, and when Shen Wanzan heard that he was a ghost, the whole person broke out in a cold sweat. "Brother, it was Mr. Chen who saved you, otherwise our Shen family will be finished." Shen Wanfu hurriedly said to Shen Wanzan. Yes, thank you Mr. Chen quickly, you scared me to death just now." Shen Wanzan's wife also said. "Thank you Mr. Chen for rescuing." Shen Wanzan got up and followed David to thank him. Although he was a little surprised to see David so young, Shen Wanzan was not shown. "Patriarch Shen, it's just a little effort, but I want to know what happened to you in the black blind forest." David asked. As soon as Shen Wanzan heard the words of Haiziazalin, his face instantly changed color with fright, and after a long silence, he slowly told the matter. It turned out that Shen Wanzan was fascinated by wealth and knew that the trees in Haiziazi forest were tall and thick, so he took someone to cut down the trees in Haiziazi forest. Although he knew that the rumored Haiziazalin was very strange, but for the money, Shen Wanzan also risked it, not to mention that there were more than 10 of them, and there was nothing to be afraid of. The first day of felling was good, and the receipt was not small, but Shen Wanzan and the others found a mountain ginseng when they were logging. After careful inspection, they found that it was a tens of thousands of years old, but Shen Wanzan was very happy. Shen Wanzan knew that he had no experience in digging wild ginseng and was afraid that it would be damaged, so he didn't move the after he tied the wild ginseng with a red rope. He dug a trench more than 10 meters away from the wild ginseng to prevent the wild ginseng from running away. It's just that when the trench was dug, I didn't expect it to be a mass grave, and a lot of bones were dug up. Although he was a little scared, Shen Wanzan didn't stop, but continued to order people to dig, and sent someone back to tell the Shen family that they found Wanzan Nian Ginseng King thing. However, before the pit was dug, it suddenly became dark, and the entire mountain forest seemed to be shrouded in black mist. Shen Wanzan couldn't remember what happened later, and it was now when he opened his eyes. After my eldest brother sent someone to tell me, I immediately took them there, but the eldest brother was lying on the ground and was already unconscious, and the others disappeared, and after searching for a long time, they couldn't find it, but the mountain ginseng still. I didn't dare to move, so I ordered someone to bring my eldest brother back. Shen Wanfu continued what Shen Wanzan said. David nodded slightly. That's right, it's no wonder that as soon as I entered the door, I found that your Shen family was windy, and it really was digging someone's ancestral grave. Mr. Chen, what to do next? Will the ghost come back? Shen Wanfu asked worriedly. Now you take me to see the 10,000 years Shen Wang, and take a look at the cemetery, so that those ghosts don't haunt your Shen family. David said. After hearing what David said, Shen Wanfu nodded and said, okay, then I'll take Mr. Chen. I'm going to. Shen Wanzan also wanted to follow. Shen Wanfu wanted to persuade Shen Wanzan. After all, Shen Wanzan had just woken up and was still very weak. But before he opened his mouth, David opened his mouth and said, let him follow. After all, he did things, and there should be an explanation. Seeing David say this, Shen Wanfu didn't say anything else. A group of people, driving a few cars, rushed towards Haiziazalin together. Although it was midday now, as soon as everyone got out of the car and walked into the black blind forest, they couldn't help but fight a cold war. David looked at the sky and frowned slightly. Mr. Chen, is there any difficulty? Seeing David like that, Shen Wanzan asked in a low voice. It's okay, you lead the way. David shook his head. However, at this moment, David saw that the sky was full of yin, which almost covered the sky. It was not like the ancestral tomb of a certain family. There should have been a lot of people who died here, and none of them died naturally. Caused such a heavy yin qi. Shen Wanzan was supported by Shen Lang and led the way in front of him. After walking for more than half an hour, he arrived at the place where he found Wanyan Shen Wang. After arriving at the place, David was a little dumbfounded, and the other people who had never been there also widened their eyes, and they couldn't be more shocked. I saw a radius of hundreds of meters, and the ground was full of dense bones. These bones were scattered everywhere, and the scene was very shocking. In the middle of these bones, a ginseng was swaying in the wind, and there was a red rope tied to it. David saw at a glance that it was indeed 10,000-year-old ginseng. How can there be so many human bones here? Zhou Haiqian asked in surprise. Now they are all attracted by these bones. As for the 10,000-year ginseng king, it is not so attractive. If my guess is correct, this place should have been a battlefield before, or a place of execution. David said lightly. Yes, I remember that there was a war here before. At that time, it was still a little devil. There were often gunshots in this forest. Joshikian nodded quickly when David said this. Then these human bones were all killed in battle? Shen Wanfu asked David in a low voice. Not necessarily, David shook his head. If you want to know how these people died, you have to ask them. After David finished speaking, he suddenly pinched his fingers, and a flame shot out from his hand. The flames exploded in mid-air, just like fireworks. However, along with the bursting flames, there were bursts of participation suddenly in the air, and then the sky darkened, and countless black gas blocked the sunlight. Those black chi were like ghosts with their teeth and claws, roaring constantly, while a wisp of black chi fell to the ground and instantly condensed into a human form, still the ghost that had just escaped from the Shen family. What is this? Shen Wanzan was startled and screamed. However, others have seen it before, and there is no such big reaction as him, but seeing so many ghosts suddenly appear in the sky, they are also quite frightened. I didn't expect you to catch up here, are you trying to kill them all? The ghost roared and questioned David. Who are you? Why do you still kill people after you die? David asked coldly. The ghost's eyes were full of scarlet, and a mouth bared its fangs. David didn't say anything when he saw the ghost. With a hand, a flame appeared in David's palm. Seeing the flame, the ghost's eyes were full of horror, and he was instantly cowardly. We didn't harm anyone, it's all these people who dug up our bones for the sake of money and disturbed our cleaning. The ghost pointed at Shen Wanzan and said. Then why don't you reincarnate and wander in this forest? David asked. The ghost was silent. After a while, the ghost put away its fangs and said slowly, we have no shelter, no burial, no way to reincarnate. Then who are you all? How did you die? David continued to ask. The ghost slowly raised his head and glanced at the air. We are all soldiers, and all my comrades are buried here. We were killed here by little devils. After David listened to it, the flame in his hand went out instantly. It seems that he guessed right. These people did not die naturally, otherwise there would not be such a heavy yin qi. We are trapped in this forest, because no one has claimed the burial, we can't get out of here, but fortunately there is a mountain ginseng here, we nurtured the mountain ginseng with our flesh and blood. I hope to absorb the essence of the mountain ginseng, and finally transform into a human form, take my brothers out of this forest, but these people actually dug our bones for the sake of wild ginseng. The ghost looked at Shen Wanzan angrily. Everyone could hear the ghost's words. Seeing that these people were actually soldiers, they all felt awe in their hearts. Thinking of the remains of these soldiers, they were thrown everywhere. Even the Shen family members were looking at Shen Wanzan. The eyes are obedient. Even Shen Lang was no exception, looking at his father with anger in his eyes. Feeling everyone's gaze, Shen Wanzan's face flushed red, and he lowered his head in embarrassment. You died to protect the people of the country, but you can't kill so many people just because they dug up your bones. That's a dozen lives. David asked. Those people are not dead, they are just trapped in the forest, more than 500 meters to the west. The ghost pointed to the west and said. As soon as Shen Lang heard that those people were not dead, he hurriedly looked westward. Sure enough, not long after, he brought back more than a dozen people, but these people were trapped here for the past few days, obviously embarrassed a lot. Looking at the people who came back, Shen Wanzan regretted his actions. He should not be greedy for money and almost killed these people. And David saw that the ghost didn't really hurt anyone, and he was a soldier before his death, so there was no hostility in an instant. This 10,000-year-old ginseng cannot make you transform into a human form. Since you died for the people of the country, we should build a monument for you to bury you so that you can reincarnate in peace. David said, looked at Shen Wanzan and said, Patriarch Shen, this incident happened because of your greed for money. Would you like to pay to build a cemetery for these soldiers who died, and to sweep their tombs for sacrifice? I will, I will. Shen Wanzan nodded again and again, and knelt directly to the ground. I am willing to spend money to build a cemetery at the foot of the mountain, so that future generations will remember these warriors. Shen Wanzan cried bitterly. It could be seen that he really regretted it, and everyone in the Shen family knelt down one after another. It was a sin for their Shen family to do such a thing. As a young man, Shen Lang flushed with shame and fell to the ground heavily. Shen Lang said, "Mr. Chen, I will immediately order the remains of these soldiers to be collected and built within half a month. Good cemetery, they have been forgotten by the world for decades, they should not be forgotten anymore. I am willing to guard the mausoleum for them for 3 years, thinking that my father atonement." Looking at the attitude of the Shen family, David nodded slightly, then looked at the ghost and said, "Now they are willing to build a cemetery for you, your achievements will be remembered by the world, you can rest assured and don't wander around." The ghost looked at the attitude of everyone in the Shen family, and suddenly a line of blood and tears flowed out, and Yang Tian shouted, "Brothers, have you heard? We have not been forgotten, and now we can leave in peace." With the roar of the ghost, there seemed to be bursts of responses in the air, and then the black mist dissipated, and the sun shone in and hit the ghost. The figure of the ghost became weaker and weaker, and finally disappeared slowly, and the whole forest returned to calm. If it weren't for the corpses all over the ground, and the king of 10,000 years ginseng, everyone would think it was the same in a dream. "Thank you, Mr. Chen, for saving your life." Shen Wanzan kowtowed heavily towards David. Everyone in the Shen family also kowtowed to David to thank him. Although David was young, they had seen it with their own eyes. "Patriarch Shen, you have to pay for the sins you made by yourself. You can't change your mind about the good things you promised," David said to Shen Wanzan. Shen Wanzan blushed. "No, absolutely not. I will find someone to work right now to gather up the remains of these soldiers." "Patriarch Shen, the matter is settled, let's talk about the price of the 10,000-year-old ginseng king. After all, it was you who discovered this ginseng king. David is here to join the king of 10,000 years, and now we are talking about business." As soon as Shen Wanzan heard this, he waved his hand quickly. "Mr. Chen, if you need it, just take it. I, Shen Wanzan, have been greedy for money all my life. Today, I think I understand that money is nothing but something outside my body. I can't spend it all in my life, I will spend the money in the future to build cemeteries all over the country, and I will also find the families of those soldiers to help them." It could be seen that Shen Wanzan really repented, and this incident hit him hard. "If that's the case, then I'm welcome." Since Shen Wanzan said so, David was not polite. After all, the 10,000-year-old ginseng king was very important to him. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to dispatch people from my home. I'm afraid it will take a few days to dig 1,000 years of ginseng king like this. I have to be careful when digging. I personally supervise the work," Jose Higgins said to David. In a few days, David didn't have time to wait, so he waved his hand and said, "No need, you all go back, I'll stay here by myself, and Lin Tianhu will drive to pick me up tomorrow morning." Everyone didn't know what David was going to do, but no one dared to refute it. All of them left the hay-blind forest. When everyone walked back, David looked at the 10,000-year ginseng king, and was very excited. He hurriedly sat cross-legged and circulated his body's concentration technique. A large amount of spiritual energy swarmed towards David, and the 10,000-year-old ginseng king seemed to feel something. The branches and leaves swayed desperately, as if to get rid of the fate of being absorbed. It took David half a day and a night to drain the spiritual energy of the 10,000-year ginseng king, and David's realm also jumped directly to the 3rd floor of the Anidia period. When David opened his eyes, he felt the strength of the tyrannical once again. Glanced around the woods. With the 10,000-year ginseng king, David's strength has only increased by 2 levels during the fasting period. David does not know how difficult the road of cultivation will be, but since he has stepped into the path of immortality, David will not give up easily, and besides his own background is not yet known. Looking at the skeletons all over the ground, David knelt down and kowtowed to these warriors. After all, the growth of the 10,000-year-old ginseng king was also attributed to these people. They cultivated this 10,000-year-old ginseng king with their own flesh and blood. When David walked out of the black blind forest, he found that Lin Tianhu had already driven at the foot of the mountain and waited, while Shen Lang brought dozens of people, ready to collect the remains. Not far from the foot of the mountain, the roaring mechanical sound kept thinking, after going down the mountain yesterday, Shen Wanzan immediately found the construction team and started the construction of the cemetery. David didn't stop there too much, but asked Lin Tianhu to drive him to Shen's house. David planned to go back to Horindal immediately after saying goodbye. After all, tomorrow was the day to fight with Qin Xiaolin. He couldn't be late. Now that his strength has improved, David also had a lot of confidence in his heart. David arrived at the Shen family, and the Shen family had been waiting for David, but when David said that he was leaving, Shen Wanzan hurriedly said, "Mr. Friendship, you stay here for 2 more days, so that my Shen family has the opportunity to repay Mr. Chen." "Patriarch Shen, I do have some urgent matters, I can't wait for a long time, let's leave it now," David said politely. Seeing David's insistence, Shen Wanzan could only be slightly disappointed. "Since Mr. Chen has something important, I won't force it, but if Mr. Chen wants to be useful to my Shen family, we will do whatever." Shen Wanzan said very sincerely, it was thanks to David that the Shen family could escape the catastrophe this time. "Okay." David nodded. Shen Wanzan sent someone to drive David and the others directly to the airport. Because Zhou Zhigan had to deal with some things at Zhou's house, he did not go back with David. At noon, David and the others returned to Horindal. At this moment, David's Pinerist villa was surrounded by people. Lin Tianhu and Chifeng were not there. Hundreds of people surrounded David's villa. Gu Wenchen and Reuben were both there. Seeing David coming back, these people hurriedly greeted them, while David asked with a puzzled look, "What happened?" "Mr. Chen, then Qin Xiaolin is here, right in the room," Gu Wenchen said nervously. When David heard that Qin Xiaolin had come to his house, his face instantly became extremely cold. Just when David wanted to walk towards the villa, Sonia hurriedly took David's arm. "David, don't go in, I'm afraid." Sonia was afraid that David would have a conflict with Qin Xiaolin. "Don't worry, I'm here, don't be afraid." David patted the back of Sonia's hand. A group of people followed behind David and walked in mightily. Walking into the villa, on the sofa in the hall, a middle-aged man in a grey gown with a fierce face is sipping tea. This middle-aged man is Qin Xiaolin. Behind the middle-aged man, there were 2 subordinates standing. David just glanced at them, and he could see that both of them were above the strength of the 5th-rank Grand Master. "I came to see that David. If David doesn't come back, the others will get out for me, don't disturb me." Hearing the sound of the door, Qin Xiaolin said coldly without looking at it. "This is my home, I think it's you who should get out." David frowned slightly. Hearing this, Qin Xiaolin put down the teacup, turned his head slowly, and looked towards the door. When he saw David, he was obviously stunned. "You are David?" Qin Xiaolin asked. "Yes, I am David Chen who killed your son, killed your nephew, and injured your brother." David felt angry when he saw Qin Xiaolin's tugging appearance. He deliberately said this to stimulate Qin Xiaolin. Sure enough, when Qin Xiaolin heard it, his anger suddenly rose, the teacup in front of him was shattered, and Qin Xiaolin also stood up at this moment. The entire hall was instantly covered by Qin Xiaolin's murderous aura. The terrifying and bloody murderous aura directly overwhelmed everyone who walked into the villa. David looked at Qin Xiaolin, his body trembled slightly, and a majestic spiritual power emanated, instantly shrouding the people behind him. resisting Qin Xiaolan's momentum. Seeing this, Qin Xiaolan frowned slightly, but quickly regained his momentum. Patriarch Qin, since you have already issued the challenge letter, you can compete in the arena tomorrow. Why do you want to find a home today? The rules of the martial arts world, if you have issued the challenge letter, it will not be a disaster for your wife and children. Gu Wenchen and Qin Xiaolan are old acquaintances. I think that Qin Xiaolan would still call Gu Wenchen an ancient uncle. After all, the Qin family developed in Kyoto, and Gu Wenchen did not lose much effort. But now, Gu Wenchen was talking to Qin Xiaolan, and Qin Xiaolan just glanced at Gu Wenchen coldly, and didn't pay any attention to him at all, obviously looking down on Gu Wenchen. Although Qin Xiaolan didn't speak, one of the men behind Qin Xiaolan took a step forward. What does our master do? It's not your old man's turn to point fingers. The words of the servants of the Qin family made Gu Wenchen's face flush red. He thought that not to mention the servants of the Qin family, even the owner of Qin Xiaolan would not dare to talk to him like this, but now that the times have changed, the Qin family is one everyone under his name dared to yell at Gu Wenchen. Although Gu Wenchen was angry, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, it was different now, the Gu family was in decline, and he didn't have the strength to fight with the Qin family. What kind of thing are you? If it wasn't for my grandfather's help back then, the Qin family would be a piece of shit now. Seeing that her grandfather was angry, Gu Linger immediately became angry and punched the servant of the Qin family directly. Gu Linger's strength is like a 3-year-old child in front of the master's strength of the Qin family's servant. Seeing that Gu Linger dares to move towards himself, then the Qin family's servant's mouth has the same disdain on his face. Girl Gu, just watch, I'll teach the Qin family dog a lesson. Lin Tianhu couldn't see it for a long time. After stopping Gu Linger, he slapped the servant of the Qin family. Seeing Lin Tianhu attacking, there was a hint of solemnity on the faces of the servants of the Qin family. After all, Lin Tianhu is already a master now, and his body is very strong. Thanks to David's great return of pills, only then did Lin Tianhu's strength improve so quickly. However, Lin Tianhu has just stepped into the master, and there is still a big gap between the servants of the Qin family in front of him. Bang! After a muffled sound, Lin Tianhu's body took a few steps backwards. If Qi Feng hadn't hurriedly supported Lin Tianhu would have fallen to the ground at this time. This is your subordinate? The strength is too poor. Qin Xiaolan looked at Lin Tianhu's embarrassing appearance and snorted at David. David did not speak, but glanced at Qi Feng. Qi Feng nodded, and rushed out with a vigorous step. During this period of time, with the help of David's medicinal pills, Qi Feng's strength improved by leaps and bounds. When the servants of the Qin family saw that Qi Feng was a woman, they immediately relaxed their vigilance, with a hint of playfulness in their eyes. But then, the servant of the Qin family regretted it, and when Qi Feng threw out a fist, the servant of the Qin family hurriedly raised his arms to resist. Bang! After a muffled sound, the servant of the Qin family was directly kicked out and fell heavily to the ground. This is the servant of your family? It's not even a woman, and it's shameful to bring it out. David looked at Qin Xiaolan with a sneer. Dare to stand in front of me, hurt my subordinates, court death. Qin Xiaolan's face turned cold, and he patted his palm directly at Qi Feng. Although he was separated by a few meters, Qi Feng still felt a huge force attacking him. Qi Feng was startled and quickly retreated, but it was too late. He was directly hit by Qin Xiaolan's palm wind, and a mouthful of blood spit out from his mouth. Qi Feng glared at Qin Xiaolan. Although there was a huge gap in strength, there was no fear in Qi Feng's eyes. You can still stand when you get punched by me. Qin Xiaolan was slightly surprised, and bursts of anger rose in his eyes. Qin Xiaolan raised his palm again, only to see a ball of light condensed on Qin Xiaolan's palm, and lightning seemed to pass through the ball of light. Seeing this scene, panic flashed in Qi Feng's eyes, but she did not flinch. Just when Qin Xiaolan was about to shoot, David stepped out, and a crack appeared on the ground instantly, and the crack was moving towards Qin Xiaolin at a very fast speed. Seeing this, Qin Xiaolin could only press his palm down, and the ball of light in his hand instantly hit the crack on the ground. After a loud noise, a large pit with a diameter of nearly 1 meter appeared on the marble floor of the hall. The smoke and dust rose, and an aftermath dispersed to the surroundings. David hurriedly pushed his palms, and a wall of air rose out of thin air, blocking the aftermath, so as not to hurt Reuben and Sonia. After all, they are all ordinary people. Even the aftermath, they couldn't bear it. And Qin Xiaolin's 2 subordinates were directly swept away by the aftermath, both of them fell to the ground, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. David and Qin Xiaolin shot, even if it was the aftermath, the strength of their master could not bear it. You really have some strength. Qin Xiaolin looked at David with a bit of surprise in his eyes. Your strength is not bad, David said coldly, but even if you are strong enough to break my home, you will still have to pay. Seeing that David actually asked himself to compensate, Qin Xiaolin was stunned for a moment, and then laughed loudly, Boy, if you are really capable, then let me pay you in the ring tomorrow. Let's go. After Qin Xiaolin finished speaking, he said to his 2 subordinates. The 2 servants of the Qin family stood up with each other's arms and walked out behind Qin Xiaolin. Seeing Qin Xiaolin lead people away, no one at the door dared to stop him. My account, no one has ever dared to owe it. Just as Qin Xiaolin and his 2 men passed by David, David suddenly shot. However, David did not attack Qin Xiaolin, but directly attacked the 2 men behind Qin Xiaolin. Bang bang! After 2 muffled sounds, I saw that the 2 subordinates brought by Qin Xiaolin were directly shot in the head, and they didn't even have time to react. Since you don't want to lose money, then use your life to pay for it. As soon as David let go, Qin Xiaolin's 2 subordinates all fell to the ground, their eyes wide open, and they couldn't rest their eyes. You! When Qin Xiaolin saw this, his anger rose. David looked at Lin Tianhu, remove everyone, don't wait for tomorrow, we have to make a break today. David knew that if he and Qin Xiaolin fought, they would not have the ability to care about others. Even if the aftermath of the battle between the 2 of them would have hurt a lot of people. Lin Tianhu also knew that they wouldn't be able to help David at all if they stayed behind. Thinking of this level of battle, these so-called grandmasters would probably not be able to intervene at all. Qin Xiaolin looked at David, who was about to fight to the death, suddenly withdrew his anger, and looked at David coldly, tomorrow I will ruin your reputation and die in front of many colleagues in the martial arts circle. Under my feet. After Qin Xiaolin finished speaking, he turned around and left, only to see that he disappeared without a trace. Qin Xiaolin didn't follow David, he planned to let everyone see David's tragic state tomorrow in order to avenge his own murder. Qin Xiaolin left, but the strength Qin Xiaolin showed just now made everyone worried about David's fight tomorrow. While Sonia looked at the 2 corpses on the ground, her internal organs were tumbling for a while, but she resisted and didn't spit it out. She is just an ordinary person, and such bloody scenes are rarely seen. Seeing Sonia's appearance, David hurriedly stood in front of Sonia and held Sonia in his arms. Don't look at it, go home quickly. David winked at Lin Tianhu. Lin Tianhu immediately ordered the body to be carried away, and the scene was simply cleaned up. Sonia shook her head in David's arms. No, I'm not afraid. I want to be a warrior in the future, so I want to kill people. If I'm afraid now, how can I help you? Hearing Sonia's words, David was deeply moved, but now is not the time for Sonia to practice, and he doesn't have that ability, so he has to wait until he sees Long Wu. Go home, I can't cultivate with peace of mind here, do you want to see me defeated tomorrow? David smiled lightly. Sonia hurriedly broke free from David's arms, covered David's mouth with her jade hand and said, Bah, 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 don't talk nonsense, how can you lose? I don't allow you to lose. Sonia, let's not disturb David here, let him practice for a while, the chance of winning will be higher. Go back and I will teach you luck. Gulinger said to Sonia. Sonia nodded, looked at David worriedly, and left. After the crowd dispersed, looking at the still messy hall, David walked into the bedroom with a heavy heart. David, who had already reached the Anitia period, had no problem without eating or drinking water for a month, so he sat cross-legged on the bed. He originally wanted to practice, but unfortunately the thin spiritual energy made him not interested at all. In the end, David lay on the bed, slowly took out the bronze mirror, and kept thinking about his identity. There were many things he didn't understand, but it was a pity that Longwu didn't tell him. Now David can only desperately hope that the day of July 15th will come. Only on July 15th will David know his life experience. But just when David was about to fall asleep in a daze, he suddenly felt that there were two figures in front of him, which made David break into a cold sweat. You must know that with David's strength, even if there is a little movement within 100 meters, don't even try to hide it from him. But when the two of them were in front of him, David didn't realize it. Why didn't David panic? If these two people came to assassinate him, wouldn't David be in danger at this time? With a shudder, David jumped up from the bed, but when he looked closely, David's heart was relieved. It turned out that the two people who had entered his room were Longwu and Wu Meier. The little muscles all over the body look really strong. Wu Meier looked at David's body wearing only underwear, and smiled slightly at the corner of her mouth. David's face turned red, he hurriedly put on his clothes, and looked at Longwu and Wu Meier a little strangely, wondering what these two people were doing suddenly at his home. Yes, I didn't expect to see you for a few days, and the strength has increased again. It seems that I have encountered an opportunity. Looking at David, Longwu nodded with satisfaction. He had no idea that David had absorbed the Ginseng King of Wanyan. Long. Uncle Long, what are you doing here in Horndal? David asked suspiciously. What else can I do? Isn't Uncle Long worried about your safety and worry? I didn't expect your kid to encounter an adventure, and his strength has improved so much. Wu Meier said with envy in her eyes. When David saw that Longwu had come from Kyoto because he was worried about his safety, he immediately said with gratitude, Thank you, Uncle Long, for worrying. I have the confidence to defeat that Qin Xiaolin. Seeing David's self-confidence, Longwu was a little happy, but he still said with a serious face, although you have reached the third floor of the Biga realm now, you can't underestimate the strength of Wuzong. Qin Xiaolin does not rely on chance. With his own strength, he has forced himself to retreat to the realm of Wuzong, and he has real skills, so don't underestimate the enemy. Thank you Uncle Long for his teaching, I will remember it. David nodded. Well, that's fine, don't forget to put on the heart-protecting bronze mirror tomorrow, and I will also watch you fight tomorrow, so don't be under pressure. Wuzong is a formidable enemy to you, but to me, I can run over him with one finger, but I can't help you block all the enemies, you have to carry everything, do you understand? Longwu is like an elder, exhorting David and giving David confidence. Longwu's words are obvious, that is, Master David, don't be afraid, it is really about to die. When David loses to Qin Xiaolin, Longwu will not stand by below, and will ensure David's safety. In this way, there is no threat to life, David can feel more at ease, and he will let go of his hands and feet. Well, I understand. David nodded again. After saying a few more words with David, Longwu turned around to leave, but just after Longwu turned around, he was stopped by David. Uncle Long, I want to ask you one thing. David called to stop Longwu. Didn't I say it, after July 15th, you will know what you want to know. Now if you ask me, I can't answer you. Longwu thought that David was asking about his life experience. Uncle Long misunderstood, I'm not asking this, I want you to accept my girlfriend as your apprentice. She's just an ordinary person, but I hope she can also step into the path of cultivating immortals, so that we can live together for a long time. Together. David wanted Sonia to practice as well. When Sonia's realm rises higher, the age of living will be longer and longer. Otherwise, after decades, David can only watch Sonia die, but he wants to alone waiting to die. Do you think that just one person can step into the path of immortal cultivation? I have seen your girlfriend, who is not even a martial artist. You still want to cultivate immortals? You think too beautiful. When Wu Meyer saw that David actually wanted to make her girlfriend immortal, she immediately sneered. I'm not a warrior either, I'm just an ordinary person. Didn't the Irvin lead me into the path of immortality? David retorted. After all, David was very ordinary since he was a child, and he was not a martial artist when he was in prison. Can I compare with you, but... Wu Meyer was about to say something, but Long Wu gave her a fierce stare, and Wu Meyer hurriedly swallowed the words back. David looked at Wu Meyer, he knew that Wu Meyer must also know something, but Long Wu was there, Wu Meyer dared not say it. David, it's not impossible for you to want your girlfriend to step into the path of immortality, but it's definitely not acceptable to take me as a teacher. I don't want to mislead my children. Don't think that my strength is very high. Wait until you truly understand the world of immortality. After that, you will find that there is a sky outside the sky, and there are people outside the world, but I can give you a few pills to wash the marrow. After your girlfriend eats it, she will wash her body. You are teaching her a mental method, can you? Step into the world of immortality, then look at her good fortune. Long Wu said to David. Thank you, Uncle Long. David looked happy. I didn't bring the essence elimination pill this time, do you have any herbs here? You don't need any expensive ones, just ordinary herbs. I'll make a few for you. This essence pill is no better than the body tempering pill, it's very easy to refine. Long Wu asked. What herbs does Uncle Long need? I ordered someone to send them now. Although it was very late, David's phone call was immediately delivered. Long Wu told David the herbs he needed, and David called Lin Tianhu directly and asked Lin Tianhu to drive to Yaoangfu to get the medicine immediately. About 3 hours later, and it was already midnight, Lin Tianhu rushed back and delivered all the herbs he needed. Lin Tianhu felt a little surprised when he saw a man and a woman who suddenly appeared in David's villa, and the girl looked familiar. Lin Tianhu then remembered that it was the girl who brought the heart-protecting bronze mirror a few days ago. After letting Lin Tianhu put the herbs down, David told him to go back to rest, while Long Wu looked at the herbs in front of him, his men flipped slightly, and a green fire suddenly jumped in the air. Long Wu used his mind to stimulate the spirit fire, and the spirit fire became more and more vigorous, and finally turned into a puppy. Seeing this situation, David's eyes widened. It was the first time he saw someone control the spirit fire to make alchemy. Soon, the puppy transformed by the spirit fire ate all the herbs in its stomach. Through the spirit fire, you could clearly see that the herbs began to burn and melt in the puppy's stomach. Seeing this scene, Long Wu's mind moved, directly activating the spiritual energy, making the spiritual fire more vigorous, and the whole room was filled with rich spiritual energy. Feeling the huge spiritual power on Long Wu's body, David was envious. He didn't know that he could only cultivate to Long Wu's strength in that month. David was wrapped in aura, and the condensation art in his dantian turned far away unconsciously, and began to frantically absorb the aura emanating from Long Wu in the room. The incomparably overbearing mentality of Ning Zhenju is like a big vortex at this moment, directly sucking away the spiritual energy of Long Wu, but the spiritual fire of alchemy has lost the blessing of spiritual energy and gradually became dim. Long Wu's forehead was full of sweat at this moment, but he didn't stop David, instead he suddenly took a breath and frantically poured out the spiritual power in his dantian. Wu Meyer looked at this scene with a look of surprise in her eyes, and it took a while before she reacted and glared at David. David, you are so shameless. You asked Uncle Long to concoct alchemy for you, but you secretly absorbed his spiritual power. Wu Meyer kicked David's butt fiercely and said. David woke up with a start, and hurriedly stopped turning to the condensing heart art, and then looked at Longwu with an embarrassed expression. Just now, David definitely didn't do it on purpose, it was just that the condensing heart technique started to work unconsciously. However, Longwu didn't speak or stop. After a while, Longwu put away his spiritual power, and at this time, 3 dark medicinal pills fell from the air to the ground. Although the medicine pill is dark, it exudes a faint light. Even if the lights in the room are turned off at this moment, it will still be illuminated very brightly. Longwu waved his hand, and 3 pills for washing marrow were in Longwu's hands, and Longwu handed the pill to David. These are 3 pills for washing marrow. For ordinary people's bodies, only 1 pill is enough. Whether you can step into the path of immortality depends on her talent and good fortune. You must not give your girlfriend more food, the body of ordinary people can't bear it. David took the pill, and felt a little unbelievable. This is the ordinary pill that Longwu said, but in David's eyes, it is hundreds of times stronger than his refining of the Juling pill and the Great Return pill, not to mention the small one. Also David always thought that he was very good at alchemy, but only after seeing Longwu's alchemy, he knew that he was afraid that he could not even reach the entry level. Looking at David like that, Longwu knew what he was thinking, so he patted David on the shoulder. Not every immortal cultivator is proficient in alchemy, I just learned a little bit, and the dragon who took you to the beginning. Irvin, he has never learned alchemy, so he only taught you some of the most basic elixir refining. You don't understand the rest, and you can be forgiven. There are special alchemists in our cultivating world, and they are the real ones. If you are proficient in alchemy, you can only learn the refining of advanced elixirs by learning from them. When Longwu said this, David immediately understood, is the alchemist in the world of cultivating immortals similar to the pharmacist in the world of martial arts? Yes, it should be the same, but the pills made by alchemists are more advanced. When you understand it later, you will know that immortal cultivators not only have alchemists, but also casters. What you are facing now, your enemies are just some warriors and warlocks. With your powerful body, you can do it without weapons, but when you really enter the world of immortality, you must find a weapon that is handy, which will make your strength even more. Longwu followed David, and David listened carefully like a primary school student. He always wanted to understand, but unfortunately no one told him, and now he finally lifted the veil of the world of immortality. Why did I accidentally tell you so much? You have a good fight tomorrow, and you will know it slowly. Longwu patted David on the shoulder again, and turned around to leave. Uncle Long, why is this David able to absorb the spiritual power emanating from your body? At this moment, Wu Meier spoke in confusion. In her understanding, no matter what kind of mental method, it is to absorb spiritual energy from all things in the world to help herself cultivate, and she has never seen anyone who can absorb spiritual energy from other people's bodies. You must know that the spiritual power emanating from other people's bodies has been transformed by one's own cultivation techniques, and is stored in the Danshan. It is not like the spiritual energy of heaven and earth at all, and can be absorbed by all immortal cultivators. Wu Meier's words made David embarrassed again, but he also asked curiously, can't you all? Before this, David had never met an immortal cultivator, and he didn't know if other people cultivated, like him, and could absorb things other than spiritual energy.